Thank you all. This conference is loaded with great ideas, technology, solutions. My question to you is, how do you take those and use them to grow your business? Mark Twain famously said, everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. My question to you is, now that you've been to this conference, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do? Now, a lot of us are here because you're successful. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. You're here because you want to learn. But at the same time, many of you are going to go back to your business, and life is going to go on, and your business is not going to grow. Because the sad truth is, even though many businesses grow and are successful till they hit $1 million, it's been said that 90% of businesses will never get past $2 million. Never get past 2. Why is that? And so what I'm going to hear and share with you today is, why do our businesses get stuck? Why do they stop growing? What can we do? And whether your business is 2 million, 20 million, or 200 million, all of us have this problem. How do we get past it? And so Camp Next Million. How do we get the next million in business for us? Now, I want you to remember back when you first started. Perhaps you founded your company or you got your job, and you had what they call that entrepreneurial seizure. You thought to yourself, I can do this. I can be successful. And guess what? You were. When you first started your business, you were good at what you did. Customers liked you, and your business grew. It seemed so easy, didn't it? And then after a while, what happens? You grow. We call this growth camp. Now, by the way, my camps are not quite the same as Art's, as you'll see in a minute, but I call it Base Camp 1, Growth Camp. But then what happens when your business plateaus? At first, you say, oh, maybe just a business cycle, but then maybe you feel like this. What's wrong? How come everybody else is growing and not me? What's wrong with me? And I call this camp, Oh Shucks. What's wrong? Why can't I grow? And a lot of people live in Camp Oh Shucks. And I would just say, here are some of the reasons that I see that people don't grow to their capability. Number one, your processes are great for a small business, but they don't work and scale to a larger business. It's what I call whack-a-mole business. Something pops up and you hit it, something pops up and you hit it, and that's not a system. Secondly, you don't have the right people and roles to grow and scale your business as you could. Let me just ask a quick question. I know you're eating, but let me ask you, in the room here, how many of you are either the hardest working person in your business or close to the hardest working person in your business? Let's see the hands. Now see, that's a problem. Your employees should be the hardest working people in the business, not you. You should be the hardest thinking person and let your employees do the work. Next is the sales engine, and of course that's a topic in and of itself. Next is finance. It's expensive to hire people, to add new lines of business, demo equipment. I get it. But what I want to talk about here is the differentiated value. The fifth biggest impediment to you growing and realizing your potential is because you're not differentiating yourself. You don't have the specialized skills. That's what I'm going to talk about. So I'm Mike Schmidtmann, and when people reach Oh Shucks Camp, I come in. I ran a business myself, just like you do. Matter of fact, I started in 1999 with one person. So those of you who have a small business, I can relate to that. I had one guy. In fact, in a minute, I'm going to talk about who that guy is and what he's doing now. But we grew very quickly, $4 million a year for 8 years. And at the end, we'd done $175 million. And I'm proud of that. So I've never had a problem growing the business. I've had other problems, but that was not one of them. We were number one in the Washington Business Journal 3 years in a row. So in terms of growing the business, I feel confident in saying I help people do that. And having seen many businesses such as yourselves, I can say this, that your salespeople are working at a fraction of their capacity, your executives are working at a fraction of their capacity, and your business is working at a fraction of the capacity. What is holding you back? What will allow you to be better and be more successful in your business? That's what I want to chat about right now. I'm going to give you 3 examples of companies that have broken through to Camp Next Million. One is a medium-sized company, one is a small company, and one is a small company that became a very big company. And I'll share with you their stories, how they did it, and hopefully you can use the same practices yourself. Because going from Camp Oh Shucks to Camp Next Million is the hardest part of the journey. And those of you who are familiar with Mount Everest, this is in fact the hardest part, not the next part. This part is the hardest. Now the key to doing this is, in my opinion, specialized skills. Matter of fact, Carolyn April yesterday talked about specialized skills as one of her keys as well from CompTIA. What do I mean by specialized skills? When we look at other businesses, you'll notice the specialists make more money. You see here in front of you people in the medical profession, and the specialists earn twice what the general practitioners do. And so it is in your business as well. If you're a specialist, you will earn not twice, maybe 10 times what the normal general business does. So specialization is the key to growth and profitability. Now, once you become a specialist, you have a knowledge set, and you've now surpassed your customer's ability to keep pace with you. And it changes the relationship of the sales equation. So as Henry Ford famously said, if I asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. Your customers don't know what they want. Steve Jobs used to say that too. Customers don't know what they want. They need you, the expert, to show them the way. So I'm going to tell a story first about a man I worked with in Northern California, and he had on his wall this saying, "The customer is always wrong." And I asked him, I said, why do you have that message that flies in the face of everything I've ever heard about customer service? And what he said was, I know this technology inside and out, and they don't. I know what works, I know where the bugs are, I know where the incompatibilities are, I know what's hard to deploy and easy. My customers don't know that, even though they think they do. Secondly, by the time they hear about something, I've known about it for 6 months or 12 months. And when they think they want something, usually they're mistaken because there's something better or something they don't know. The customer is always wrong. So here's a story about how that played out in the sales world. So he's making a call. He was a specialist in the education market. And he made a call on a community college in California, and he was talking to the IT director. And he said, by the way, you've got campuses all over Northern California. You get funding from the state based on how many people you interview for college. If you get more interviews, you'll get more funding from the state. The state also has a grant program to help fund this because they want to help disadvantaged students. And if you get the grant program, you'll be able to put video in all the remote sites that will allow you to get more applications that will then get greater funding for you. And the best part of it is, once you have this infrastructure in place for video, you can then repurpose it as well for distance learning. You can expand your curriculum. And the guy says, wow. He says, I didn't know that. He says, really? So if we do this, the state will actually pay for this to happen? He says, yes. He says, I'm going to tell the president about this. So he starts going home. About half an hour away, he gets a phone call. And the man says, I talked to the president of the community college, and he said, I want to talk about this now. Can you turn around and come back? He said, sure. He turned around and came back, and he told the same story for this community college about how they could get this funding to improve admissions, improve student education. And it turned out to be a $2.5 million sale. And those of you who know in the Cisco business, he gets 25 points of hardware margin on that, which is unheard of in the Cisco business. Not once did he talk about the technology at all. Not at all. He talked about what it meant to the community college, how they could raise enrollments, improve education, improve the student experience. That was what was important. $2.5 million, not even competed, and he got it. So what did he show for specialized skills? He had certainly vertical market expertise. He knew the education market inside and out. He also knew the application, what was important. And lastly, he knew the procurement process inside and out. And isn't that important too, if you're trying to sell big sales, to know how people buy and how to navigate it through the purchasing system. So that's how he made that sale. Now you may ask yourself, well, wait a second, I'm not a specialist in education or healthcare or legal or manufacturing. How do I do this? I'm going to share with you how you can take the ideas, even if you're a generalist, and become a specialist. So my second story is from a small vendor in Atlanta. And this vendor lives in what I call 2 Millionville. So remember how people can't get past 2 million? He'd been in business 12 years, and he could not get past 2 million. Again and again, he kept trying. So I was brought in, and he said, well, Mike, how can you help me grow? So we started with, I said, tell me who your customers are right now. And it looked like a map like this. And he said, we've got trucking logistics companies, we have dermatologists, and we have Catholic schools. Now, if you see anything in common with those three clusters of customers, see me after I'm done and tell me, because I can see nothing in common with these at all. But I said, let's start in. Who is your biggest customer set? And he says, well, we happen to have a lot of people in transportation, trucking logistics. I said, okay, what are their problems? What are the problems that you're fixing? And he says, well, trucking logistics, they've got loads, they've got drivers, they got to mix them up. They have multiple offices. They have to have connection and wide area networks in between them. They have to staff properly. And their biggest fear is that trucks and loads won't be matched quickly and fast. That's how they make their business. So I said, okay, well, let's do this. Let's take apart, how can we help this business be more effective? So they put in what's called a Bright Metrics, which is some of you guys know Bright Metrics. It's a dashboard that shows agent productivity, usage, the calls coming in. That allows their customers to staff more effectively. It also had the amount of time on each call, so you could see who the best agents were and the most productive, and weed out the people who were less productive and weed in the people who were more productive. Now, over time, step by step by step, here's how they built a specialization. It started by, and you could do the same thing. So whatever market you want to get in, start with the problems. What are the problems you can fix? Secondly, clean up the voice and data. Many of you are specialists. What they did here was they put in SIP trunking for business continuity. They put in VeloCloud to clean up the wide area network. They put in call center applications. They put in dashboards and metrics to measure the productivity. They integrated with a CRM program called McLeod that allowed them to handle calls faster, match loads faster. And in the end, they did so much business with trucking and logistics that they started networking with the McLeod salespeople. McLeod salespeople said, I want you guys to do all our implementations. And because they did a lot with trucking logistics, they would give leads to McLeod. So it was a win-win-win situation. So what happened? They started from nothing, but they learned from their customers. They developed deep knowledge about the applications. They put bundles together. And once they had these packages, they now had a competitive advantage against anybody else who was trying to compete with them. Matter of fact, they talked about a trade show that they were in, and they bought a big screen TV. And they had videos of testimonials from their customers. They had the dashboard sliding across the screen about agent productivity. And I said, how did it go at the trade show? And the guy said, they were lined up. I got laryngitis. I was talking to so many people about their applications and their needs. He says, I was talking nonstop. And matter of fact, there was a competitor on the other side of the trade show, and they got nobody. Why? They were people sitting on their cell phones behind a draped table, no value. They had specialized applications. The best thing, too, is when they raffled off the TV, so they didn't have to take it back. So they had people put their business cards in. Then they gave away the TV, but they got all sorts of leads, and which then further amplified itself. Last year, this company did $1 million just with trucking and logistics. So they burst through that $2 million threshold to 3 to 4, and this year they'll hit 5. How did they do it? With specialized applications. All right, so we've talked so far about how to navigate. And as you can see, this is not the same as Art's picture. I like my photograph better, but I think his path is probably better. But nonetheless, you go from base camp, you go to growth camp, then you hit the wall, and if you're good, you overcome these obstacles and break through the camp oh shucks, and then move up to the camp next million. Now what I want to share with you, my final story, is I think my favorite of all. This is the proudest one that I want to speak about, and it started with a sales rep. You remember when I was talking earlier, I started my business with one sales rep. Well, that sales rep is still with the company, and he just closed one of the largest sales in the country last year, and I want to tell you what he did and how he did it. So when he started, and by the way, this sale was 43,000 endpoints, 600,000 in MRR. How many of you would like to have a sale of 600,000 MRR? Let me tell you what he did and how he did it. So his name is Jeff Neal, and he was my first hire. I hired him 1 year out of college. He was 23 years old, and that's him on the right. Like a lot of good natural salespeople, he would listen to everything I said, and he became a specialist. He started becoming a specialist with call centers. He then moved on to wide area networks, and he specialized and understands these technologies. Now he's a specialist in Microsoft as well. So he employed a strategy that I call land and expand. Land and expand. So he started networking with a commercial real estate company. They would trade leads. He would give them leads for commercial companies moving. They would give him leads for people that needed telephone equipment and services. After a couple years, they said, well, you know something, we need a phone system. So he put a phone system in this company. And he landed and expanded. He landed the account, and then he said, okay, who are the people in the regional office? So he sold other branch offices, went to the regional office. Then he said, who owns the national office? It was in Texas. So he met the national office in Texas, and it became his national account. It probably took him 6 or 7 years to land and expand, step, step, step. And 2 years ago, he sold $16 million to this company over 2 years. 16, but that's not my story. Because what happened now is the company merged with another company, and now everything is at risk. How many of you have had a great customer, and a merger acquisition happens, and all of a sudden, you're back at square zero? So this company merged with another company, and the new CIO didn't know Jeff, didn't know the background, didn't care what we'd done. So they were now an international company, and they wanted to have a vision for what they were going to do around the world. Now, Jeff had been selling Avaya equipment. Again, 16 million. The CIO says, I don't care what we bought, I don't care what we spend. We're doing a bake-off. We're going to have Avaya, and he was a fan of Microsoft. He says, we're going to have a bake-off, and let's see who wins it. This took about a year, but finally it came out, and it turned out that Microsoft won this sale. Fortunately, by this time, Jeff had become a specialist at Microsoft as well, so he made the sale either way. But I've got enough time, I'm going to give a little asterisk to this story. Have any of you had a big sale that had a last-minute hiccup that maybe put your sale at risk? Well, Jeff did. When they had a planning call for this, they had engineers in a room from all over the world planning how they would implement this. Now at lunchtime, this is a Skype for Business call, and when they broke for lunch, the engineers from Jeff's company stayed in the room. They didn't realize that the bridge was still up, and every word they said was being recorded. And so the two engineers said, I can't believe these people are making such a stupid decision. I can't believe they're going to go with such an inferior technology. I can't believe they're going to do this. They did not realize this is being recorded, and I guess you might say that threw a monkey wrench into the sale. I can't tell you what Jeff did to get out of it, but remember the old Lucy show? When she'd come home and Ricky would say, Lucy, you got some splaining to do. Well, Jeff had some splaining to do about why our engineers thought this was such a bad solution, but he overcame it somehow. And the good news is he got it. So 43,000 endpoints, 600,000 MRR, and it's all done. Folks, I've met many of you in the room. Jeff is just a normal guy. When I say we work at a fraction of our capacity, that's correct. Your salespeople can pull this off. It's step, 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 fundamentals. So here's I've blocked out the name of it, but it's in fact, if you Google it, 43,000 endpoints is being implemented today as we speak. So that's my story. How do you get to the next level? You got base camp, growth camp, camp shucks. If you navigate these, you can get, and actually once you get to camp next million, it gets easier for you. So I wish you luck. My counsel to you is, you're here at a great event with lots of great speakers and technologies and solutions. Go to the trade show and ask the people in the booths, what can you do to help me specialize and how can you help me grow my business? There are hundreds of vendors here who are waiting for you to come in and introduce yourself and get the technology and the specialization. Once you do, you can start creating differentiating packages yourself. So number one, look for clusters of customers that you can build a base of expertise on. It doesn't matter what it is. They're all good as long as you're an expert. Secondly, focus on problems you can solve, not who's got the next RFP. What's a problem you can solve? And lastly, create differentiated offers to solve that. You do that, you'll reach the camp next million. And with that, I'll turn it back. So hope you got something of value out of that. Thank you very much, everybody.